Mood Talk, Mood TV. I'm here with my boy Dondre and S1A1.
What's the move, man? What's the move?
Man, you know the move, man.
You already know. So today's topic is on how melanated families handle emotional, mental reassurance. How do they basically reassure their families?
And also, I wanted to let y'all know, Mood TV, Mood Talk, follow, subscribe. Like, we're trying to do something where it's like a support group for men. So this episode will kind of be swayed over there to, for a support group, because we know, man, y'all, a lot of men of original descent be going through a lot of stuff, and there's Zoom now. We can all Zoom call and be in a circle. So just want to put that out there. So anybody want to go first on that, or want me to go first?
Yeah, you can go first. Or actually, I'll go first. This was Dre's topic, so I know you want to go.
So the question was, how are melanated families affected, and how do they cope and deal with emotional reassurance and also just reassurance overall, for children?
So I'm gonna talk just from my perspective and what I've dealt with, but I know there's different families and different men of original descent deal with their families in different ways. But from my personal experience, it's a lot of tough love. Let me just say that. It's a lot of tough love. It's a lot of, dust your shoulders off, you'll be good. So me growing up, and I noticed it later in life. You notice it after you become the person you become. Like as a kid growing up, and you have to go through what you go through with the emotions. You don't realize as an adult, hey, this carved you into the person you are today. So yeah.
I'm sorry. Can you say that one more time? This what you today?
It carves you. It carves you into the person you are today. Like your whole childhood and your emotions your trauma, everything you deal with as a child. You have to bottle that up, and you don't ever get to talk about it to anybody. It definitely carves you into the person you are as an adult. So that's basically what happened with me. And I, as a child, I didn't. Of course, my dad wasn't really there until I would say after high school. And me growing up, I didn't really have a man to talk to. Like my mom, my mom's cool. Don't get me wrong, but I couldn't go to just talk to my mom and chop it up about something.
Yeah,
about I'm going through something, just chop it up with whoever. And then my brother's so much older than me, it's like there wasn't that connection, so where I could talk to him like an older little brother type thing.
Yeah.
So
he was so far apart.
100.
Yeah.
So most of my family was in Broward County, so I don't got no cousins or nothing like that.
So not even uncles or
nothing. Like I didn't have no like big bro, little bro relationship type.
Okay.
So yeah, that's that. Like, and then as far as the parenting goes, it was tough love. It's just, my mom loved us. Don't get me wrong, my mom showed us support. She gave us all the love. But, that, like Dre said, that emotional support to say and talk and, talk things through and talk about your emotions, it wasn't, until I would say about 4 or 5 years ago, it wasn't cool for guys to talk about their emotions, if we being real. It wasn't
real deal.
For guys to talk about mental health and I'm going through it with my wife and she got me tripping and I'm going crazy. No, you gonna look crazy. Like you gonna look like the weird dude if you talk about your feelings and all of that. So I'm glad nowadays, like we're talking more about mental health and the men of original descent health. And I love that we talking about it. But we being honest, bro. When we was kids, when we was growing up, it was tough love. Dust your shoulders off. You good. We don't need to talk about our emotions. You don't cry. You good. All that. So
yeah,
that's my opinion.
Mood Talk, Mood TV, men of original descent, we stand together. Or Cyrus L, how do you feel on this subject?
I just want to say first and foremost, I love this build. I love this conversation. And I love that you can see different aspects of men of original descent. It ain't always got to be that thuggish, ruggish, always banging and just mean mugging. Like every human goes through emotions. So me personally, I agree with Sam. It's tough love. It's always tough love. It's always dust your shoulders off or get over. Well, for me, it was always a whooping. Like, no matter what you did, the way to resolve it is either go to sleep or get this belt. Like, what are you complaining about? And it's always comparison. Like
I had it way worse than what
you did. Yeah, exactly. I had it way worse than what you got going on. Something I was talking to a lady friend of mine, and she said, we're going to be the best parents. And I said, why? It's because we know what we didn't have yet. So we know how to speak to our children. We know how to communicate with them. So It's not just gonna be, go to bed or we had it way worse, so I'm just gonna whoop you to sleep. Like, there's gonna be some level of understanding, talking, building, bonding, and building up. Something I want to say real quick, and I'm gonna pass it to Dre.
Take your time, bro.
He paused, Sam. He said, "What'd you say?" He said, "This is how we were carved." And then in my head, I said, "I know why he said this, because like when you carve something that's kind of forced, you should be molding. You should be like, you know what I mean?
It should be a work of art,
and it should be subtle. It should be gradual. It shouldn't just be chop, 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 chop. Because that thing, it leaves,
trauma.
Exactly.
You feel me? So, anything else on that? You good? Until our closing, but you good? You got time, bro.
Emotional reassurance. I think it's different for boys and girls, but I can only speak on how it is to reassure a boy. Like my nephew, for instance, he doesn't really say too much. He's kind of quiet, but I feel like it's just bonding. I think most of it just comes from being around, bonding, asking him questions, and no matter what, we're gonna grow and we're gonna learn things at our own pace. So like, you just gotta be patient and understanding with them. Like some things that I'd be surprised that my nephew already knows, and I'll be like, what the. But you just have to be able to build with them. You just have to be able to keep up.
You know what? That's another thing, keeping up. So when we were growing up, this just touched base a little bit. I don't think our parents even had enough time to keep up with us. You get me? So, you done there? So from my point of view, everybody's speaking on their point of views and stuff like that. And I didn't really grow up with my father either. Luckily, I had a great grandfather, for a couple of, until like 5-6 years ago whenever he passed away. But he gave me a good foundation is what I'm saying. But I still went through the ups and the downs of the tough love that S1 is talking about. Like, he knows for a fact I could not leave the front of my house at times for weeks. I had to have my friends come over and just like we play basketball in front of.
He would beg me to come out there, like, bro, I can't come to y'all, bro. Just come. And I'll be the only one to walk back there. Like,
and that was a part of that's a good friend. Remember that he'd be the only one to come and shoot with me, whatever, you feel me? And and that's a part of tough love is the discipline of part of it, so that really like put me in a box where I felt real sheltered from the world. So everything was just a confusion to me once I got out that box. But another thing that I want to touch on that we all didn't touch on is being raised on a fear basis. Now when you're raised on a fear basis, as in like everything outside of this house you have to be afraid of, whether it be the cops, whether it be the government, whether it be whatever. Basically, you're instilling fear in a young adult, a child, whatever you want to do, for him to carve himself with that fear instilled in him. Now, thankfully, I released all of those teachings, because to actually learn in this new world, which is an old world, because ain't nothing new under this sun, right, Doug? Right. So to actually progress, you have to unlearn and relearn. Right. So in talking about that, there's a bunch of things that we can touch on these on men of original descent families, on melanated families, like where's the emotional reassurance. But really, I just really want to touch on how we can help, like what we can do, because we all been through. We was all there, getting whoopings. Like he said, I got kicked out the house when I was 14. And Sam could say that because Sam could attest for me, because I left the high school that we was going to for 3 years till I could come back to my house. You feel me? And these are not things that you're supposed to do with a young adult or a child or things like that. You're not supposed. You get me? There's certain teachings that you have to be able to grow with and learn. Now, what our community is doing, we are stuck in cycles. We have our great grandfathers and mothers' teachings being passed down, while those teachings are being passed down to us while we do the same things. The whole world is doing other things. And people wonder, like, why is it only a small certain amount of men of original descent kids that actually make it and do things and like are smart and doing things like that, and like are willing to express themselves and be top of MIT and all that stuff. There's a small percent, but there could be a way bigger percentage. Some of us are trapped in our own flesh, in our own skin. We don't know how to be who we want to be until we get to a certain age where we feel comfortable enough to express ourselves. And I know a lot of y'all out there is hurting, because I was there. We was, we used to be there until we chose to unlearn and relearn and do things like that. That's why you know, moving on into the future, we gonna start a support group for not just men of original descent, but women of original descent as well. For people, because we are not against people. We are just pro-melanin, pro-man of original descent, you feel me? Mood Talk, Mood TV, there's gonna be a part 2 to this.
Can I?
Any ending, any closing statements?
All right, real quick.
Or not closing statements, but anything you want to add on to that, or questions, anything?